Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Book Dreamer. I'm David Galata, and I'm the author of Crew of Ganges right here. And I'm talking about science fiction, talking about different themes that crop up in the science fiction that I write. And one of the things that some of the people who read my book really enjoy is my take on what's called medical sector. Now, in the ship Ganges, in my book, the generation ship Terraforming vessel, there are 8 sectors. You have command sector, you have engineering sector, you have harbor sector, you have stellar sector, planetary sector, agro sector, and you also have medical sector. And these sectors are each in control of a large part of how the ship functions. So medical sector is the most neutral of the sectors. It contains an entire wheel. So one of these, in fact, medical sector is right there. And I probably should do this. Hadn't thought of it, but I did make like a little map of the ship. And medical sector is right there. So it's that discus-shaped wheel. And medical sector is a very neutral sector in terms of the political structure of Ganges. Engineering sector and harbor often vie for the same materials, a lot of the same crew. Same with technology sector. There's the 8th sector right there, technology sector, which is in charge of maintaining Naga and maintaining communications within the ship and computer functions. That's where all your code techs go. That's where anyone who's interested in computers and AIs, they would end up in technology sector. And they also kind of vie for the same crew that engineering sector does. Now, when it comes to agro is very big politically because the rest of the ship needs them. Command sector tries to negotiate and mediate between all the other sectors. Planetary and stellar are constantly butting heads. They're always at odds with each other. But medical sector stays neutral. It doesn't care about what sector you're from. It doesn't care about what your record is or what your duty post is. They're there to take care of the crew. Now, medical sector has been using a lot of interesting techniques. Being so distant from the home world, never going back there, they had to develop a lot of medicines themselves. In some ways, they almost had to start from scratch. And one of the things that they did was they took the various plants that a lot of our medications come from. For example, salicylic acid comes from white willow. Turmeric is a major health provider, and we're just beginning to learn that now in the 21st century, although some people have been telling us that for much, much longer. And Ganges, for example, has hydroponics labs in low-grav conditions, allowing the plants to grow monstrous in size, especially their turmeric and their ginger crops. And these are ancient plants. At this point, medical sector has been caring for them for as long as they can remember. They have taken that wisdom and they've also done a lot of innovation. When you're stuck in a tin can, any kind of plague, disease, a new virus can really wreak havoc on the population very, very quickly. So they try to avoid that. One of the ways that medical sector did that was to design a virus that was a symbiote with the human system. It didn't harm the human system. It fed off of it, true, but it didn't actually cause any harm. But what it did was it blocked up all the protein receptors that most viruses would need in order to affect a cell. and they have a general immunity. Every crew member who's a novice, and I will explain that system when I talk about education, which I think will be next week. The children get sick. Every child gets sick. For about 2 weeks, they have what the crew calls the sneezies. And when they're done coughing and sneezing and having mild fevers, they are then immune to basically everything else. They have regen tanks, aloe baths for burn victims, regen tanks that can help the genetic structure if you are missing a limb from a construction accident, which happens. Terraforming is very hazardous work, and there's a lot of work that has to be done in the vacuum of space, where again you have a lot of hazards. Space construction is not necessarily the safest occupation, but it is a necessity when you're terraforming. They will encase that arm after giving you an injection of stem cells created by your own DNA, no one else's, yours. And the regen gel will help mitigate that. It will help speed the process up. So you end up eventually growing a new arm, a new hand, a new leg. They're also very good with prosthetics, and in this they work very closely with engineering sector. Engineering sector is very proud and pleased to provide medical sector with whatever it needs in terms of the treatment of patients. So a lot of the crew actually opt for prosthetic replacements because they are very, very good. Nice robotic replacements that have haptic feedback so that you can actually feel things again. Although you may actually be able to stick your hand in a flame because it is metal. You'll only feel pain if the metal and the other components of your artificial hand will become damaged. So there's a bit of a learning curve there when it comes to that. Replacement of limbs is just the start of it. Medical sector is also very good in dealing with nerves, very good in dealing with biochemistry. Their biochemistry is very, very advanced. Their genetic work is very advanced. And in many ways, other than terraforming, Ganges has really focused on improving medical technology. Whereas some of the other sciences like physics have waned a little bit. Engineering is really only involved in repairing the ship and creating improvements for the ship, and that's about it. So everything is very geared towards terraforming and keeping the crew healthy, because without a healthy crew, you're not going to terraform anything. So this is where their thinking is. Medical sector is run by a surgeon general who is also chief of medical sector. However, medical sector internally calls him the surgeon general. The surgeon general is chosen by merit, usually by a council of their peers, based on their research and their experience, and also through the recommendations of Naga. The AI is a major component in rise in rank. And this is because Naga's recommendations are always seen as dispersonal. They're very detached. They have nothing to do with politics, only with the smooth functioning of the ship. And here's where some people stumble when it comes to Ganges and its internal systems, is that they're not a nation. They're a spaceship. Now, it may be big enough to be a nation, absolutely, without question. Any ship that can hold over 60 million crew, that qualifies as a nation to us planet dwellers. But to them, they are a very small tin can in an infinite void that has to make decisions quickly and efficiently. Remember, they love efficiency. Efficiency is a big part of how they function. So they're not really there to govern humanity. They're there to lead their crew to build new worlds for the sake of the rest of humanity, not themselves. This means that there are a lot of areas that are left very gray. Medical sector could be seen as one of those because it's not ruled by command sector. Command sector does not ever tell medical, you have to do this and you have to do it now. If something has to be done, medical is probably way ahead of them anyway, and will then declare to the captain of the ship, this is what needs to be done, and here are the tools that we made to make sure it happens. Medical sector is also very involved in the control of population. Population control is a very tricky thing. They understand the human need and desire for sexuality, but you don't want a spaceship that is suddenly flooded with twice the amount of crew that it can handle. At that point, you have a crisis on your hands, and it can happen very quickly. Medical sector designed a very small organism that secretes chemicals that prohibit the production of eggs and sperm until people want to have novices or children. In that case, they receive a prescription from medical sector that puts the organism into a modified coma, so it no longer secretes those chemicals. And now pregnancy can occur. Once the pregnancy has come to its full, then the prescription is halted and it's back to doing what it does in terms of keeping the population low. Without the fear of STDs or sexually transmitted diseases, and with pregnancy being, unwanted pregnancy being an unknown in Ganges, many things have changed. The crew's behavior may seem very strange to us. It may seem, a little shocking, but that's because they don't have the same kinds of physiological restrictions that we have today. Now, there are still moral restrictions. There are still cultural imperatives. There are still religious ideologies. But that aside, most of the crew goes on about their day in whatever way they wish, knowing that medical sector is there to back them up and keep them healthy. With medical sector, you also have a lot of experimentation. That is usually done in what they call the topsides levels, which are the ones closest to the hull. Whereas a lot of their hydroponics and a lot of their low gravity labs occur in midships, which is closer to the spine of Ganges. So there's a lot of labs, a lot of surgeries, there's huge areas where they treat the crew, mainly for injuries. That's mostly what they treat them for is injuries. Although every now and then someone does crop up who has early signs of psychological issues that can be treated with either therapeutic services or with medicine, or both. And medical sector determines that based on the severity of what the client is going through, what that crew member is going through. The other thing that medical sector does, and this is a duty they do not like, this is something that was decided as part of the Prime Charter, and that is when a crew member, and it's rare, very, very, very rare, has committed a heinous crime, they may be judged by the Judiciary Council, which is made up of representatives from all sectors, so they're all equally represented, as well as Naga, in case there is a case where it involves the ship's AI. Otherwise, Naga leaves it alone, where someone must be re-educated. In this case, medical sector must block memory pathways that could infringe upon the re-education required so that that crew member is safe for everyone else to be around. This works most of the time, doesn't work all of the time. There are very few human issues that work all of the time. We seem to be very good at getting around procedures. And that's also something I'll be getting to. There is a bit of a criminal element aboard Ganges, though it might not be what you expect. So for medical sector, there's a lot of things that they do well and they're very proud of. There are also things that they do, well, because it's regulations and you have to keep peace in the tin can. If you don't keep peace in the tin can, that ship is in jeopardy. They understand the necessity of it. Doesn't mean they have to like it. So as a very neutral sector, the other sectors tend to bend over backwards for them. They like being able to show that they help medical sector. Agro always talks about its rainforests and how those rainforests are the very place where new pharmaceuticals are discovered. You have harbor sector, which is in charge of all vehicles inside and outside the ship. And they are very proud of the work that they have done for making ambulances and other vehicles for emergencies. So everyone kind of works together to make sure that medical is in good shape, because if medical is not in good shape, kind of like agro, you're in a world of trouble right there. So that's medical sector, and I hope you have enjoyed this little chat on it. We'll be chatting more about these topics as well. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them here. This fictional world of Crew of Ganges is, I think, thought-provoking in that it looks at certain solutions and sees them for what they are, imperfect. However, you're also in a very isolated situation. So it makes a really interesting thought experiment for me, the writer, and hopefully for you, the reader. Well, hope you've enjoyed this week's little episode, and I will see you next week, and we'll talk about education in Ganges. Hope you all have a wonderful day, and take care. Thank you for watching.